Okay. All right, so first of all, I want to say I'm really excited to be here because I've been to all of these like from the OG days when we was at the smaller venues. So talking here in the UK, it's not my hometown, it's like an hour away, but still I treat it like my hometown, innit? But I'm going to be talking about StoreKit too, but before I get started, Adam kind of spoiled the surprise, man. I was going to surprise you while I was on a stag do, but you're about to see some crazy pictures. Let's go. So this is me on Saturday. So I actually got here on Saturday, and I started drinking from 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At this time, this was 4 p.m., and I was already gone. So this dude is getting married next week, my mate Callum. If you're wondering as well, why am I holding a crocodile? The reason why is because we all got tasked with a challenge to basically just steal one random item from someone. So I decided to go to a bunch of teachers, just talk about how kids are like crazy and stuff, and they give me this crocodile. So if anyone wants to get me cancelled, this is the one picture that'll basically get me done. But what I then did was I decided, you know what, yeah, because I'm a guy that likes to take risks in it, so I thought, let me go a bit balls to the wall here. And I decided to go to the bartender and say, look, right, give me any shot, just surprise me with any shot. So he decided to give me a triple Jägermeister. Listen, my soul left my body. Honestly. So literally the next day in the morning, like true footage here, this was me. So I was done. And honestly, Simon is a witness because Simon saw me scurry my Uber Eats back into my hotel room, like with a swiftness. So a bit more about me, if you don't know, is I actually work at a company called Bally's Interactive. So what we do is we basically build like sports betting experiences for people in North America. So if you've got any NFL or basketball people in the house, then you might have saw the adverts and whatnot. There's actually a few of us in the room here. I can't see my members, so I can't point them out. But yeah, we're just here. Don't worry, I'll get onto this video in a second. You're probably wondering what's going on with this guy. But we're actually currently looking to hire 2 iOS and Android developers. So if you're interested in finding a role, come and talk to me. I could talk to you a bit more about that role. Another thing as well, if you didn't know already, is I'm actually a content creator, so I run the channel Tons Dev. So if you ever wondered, who's that guy who's always got his tongue out? Yep, it's me. And I actually love anime as well. So if we've got any anime heads in the building, like honestly, let's talk about anime. So recently I just finished watching Baki. I finished watching Kengan Ashura. I need to catch up on Jujutsu Kaisen, but yeah, I honestly love watching anime. It's what helps me like relax and that. So you might be wondering, okay, what's going on in this video? So basically, my friend Rebecca, she was talking absolute crud to me the whole week about how she's going to beat me at this challenge. So this is a 1 week of preparation here. So we're basically doing like this scooping cotton wool balls into a bowl. Now, it looks fun, but I was like deadly serious when I was doing this. Like, you'll see at one point, I've got the spoon in my hand, and I'm shaking my like, yeah, I'm winning this. But honestly, I didn't feel anything on the spoon. But I just like to have fun. And just for the record, I did win this by about 10 cotton balls. So sorry, Rebecca. So you're probably wondering, okay, enough about me. What am I going to talk about today? Well, I'm actually going to talk about StoreKit2 and how you can easily use it in your applications. So some of the things in this talk that I'm going to cover about are some of the new APIs that we got from iOS 16 upwards, in-app purchases, debugging, and also App Store Connect in terms of like preparing your products and all that kind of stuff. So you built your app, and you're wondering, okay, how can I make a bit of money, right? Like, let's make this a bit profitable. And us as developers, you might be an indie dev, you might work for a company. We put a lot of effort into our apps, and although we do want to help people, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make a bit of cash on the side to treat yourself, do you know what I mean? So how can we do that? Well, we can do this by using something called in-app purchases. Now, when you work with in-app purchases, there's 4 types. There's consumable. So the best way to think about consumable is like the burger. If you buy a burger, you eat it, and it's gone, right? So if you get coins, it's gone. You got non-consumable, which is kind of like an actual physical product that you don't eat. So like an iPhone, you wouldn't want to eat an iPhone. I don't see why you want to do that. But let's say if you decide to get a bit adventurous and you ate an iPhone, it's just not going to work. So you've now bought this product and you now own it. So think of it like an iPhone or a car. The other one is auto-renewable subscriptions. So these are subscriptions that automatically renew, every single year, and you just basically get the features every single year, and so on and so forth. And then finally, you've got non-renew. So non-renew is kind of like a season pass. You buy your pass, you've got it for a year. Once that expires, you have to go and buy another pass for that year. So in this talk, I'm going to be talking about consumables. So with consumables, we can basically build this or use them using StoreKit. So what even is StoreKit? Well, it's basically an API that Apple gives to us to allow us to interact with App Store Connect for like, fetching information, making purchases, whatever you may, what you might want to do. And recently, I think it was like last year, they actually made some really nice updates to StoreKit2 because don't know if anyone here has used StoreKit before, the first one, but it's an absolute nightmare to work with. I just used to use a package called SwiftLeeds StoreKit or something like that, and I just used to just put that in and hope for the best. But now we've got this, and some of the updates that they've actually given us, come around Swift Concurrency. Now, in this talk, I'm not going to go into too much detail about Swift Concurrency, but on my website and on my YouTube channel, if you go to the playlists or look for a video, I've got a free course that kind of covers everything you need to know about like async await and all that kind of stuff. Now, you might be thinking, I actually didn't know Revenue Cat was going to be here, but you might be thinking, why is there so many of these other companies? Well, to be honest with you, there's nothing wrong with using other companies. The whole point of my talk is to literally just show you that you can basically put stuff in your apps with minimal effort. So in this demo that we're going to be building, I'm just going to show you how you can use the StoreKit2 API. And what we're going to be doing is basically building this tip jar demo. So this tip jar demo is just basically something you can put in your apps, you can present it to users, someone can leave you a tip, and you're good to go. So that's what we're going to show you how to build. Now, when you're working with in-app purchases, you might be wondering, okay, how can I test these products? And if you have worked with in-app purchases before, you might be thinking, okay, I've had to upload it to App Store Connect to actually try to see this thing working in real time. Well, starting with Dub last year, 2022, you actually don't really need to do that no more. What you can do now is actually set up something called a StoreKit configuration file. And it's basically like a local tested environment for you to basically mess around with your products, which is pretty cool. Now, how would you set one of these up? Well, in this demo video, you'll see here, it's actually really simple. I do it in like 3 steps. You just basically go to File, New, and then if you go into the search bar, and then you just search for StoreKit configuration, you'll see this new file here. So this is added from Xcode 13. And now, when I choose Next, I can actually enter the name of the file that I want. But another thing I can do as well is pretty cool, is I can actually sync up this file with App Store Connect. So if I already have products in App Store Connect, I can just drag them down and just simulate testing them locally on my machine. Cool. So we've got our file, and you might be thinking, all right, we're good. Let's start coding. We're not done just yet. Yeah, there's still some more stuff we need to do. And the most important thing we need to do is actually this. So when you create that file, it's not automatically just like set up for you. You actually have to configure it within your scheme. So if you go to your scheme and go to options, you'll get this drop down and you can select that file. And what will happen now is whenever you run your app in debug mode, you now have access to those products in your like local, environment. So think of it like a dev or staging where you can just mess around and do whatever you want. So sweet. We've got our products, well, not got our products, we've got our file now. The next thing we can do is actually start to build some products. So in order to build a product, all you need to do is just in the StoreKit configuration file, hit the plus button, and then you've got a list of the different types, and then you can create them here. So I'm going to do a non-consumable, and we now get this template for this item. So within this template, what you can now do is actually set up a test product for you to work with when you're working with StoreKit. Now, there's a few things you can set here, and the first thing you can set is the name. So I can basically give the item a name. Now, it's worth noting that this name isn't the name that you'll see on the UI. It's just the name of the item when you're like testing and whatnot. You've also got product ID, which is similar to a bundle ID. So it's just to make it unique. And then the next thing you've got is the price. So you can set the price here. Now, this isn't the actual prices from App Store Connect. This is just like any price that you want to set. So it's just a testing environment, so you can do whatever you want. You could go wild and make it 1 million if you want to. It's up to you. The next thing you could do is actually set localizations. So this is where you actually set up what you see on the UI. So you can put the title, description, all the different languages. You can put it in here so you can test out those different localizations. And then after you do that, because you've now got all your products, you now want to actually kind of like store them. So it's up to you how you do this. You could put it in an array or your IDs, or you could put your IDs in a database, plist, wherever you want to put it, it's up to you. But in this example, to keep it simple, I'm just going to put it in an array. So we're just going to have an array of strings. So we've got our product set up. We've got our ID set up. Let's actually start to write a bit of code, man, because that's what we want to be doing. So now I'm going to basically create this thing called a store or a view model or a manager, whatever it is you want to call it. But all this does is just basically manages the products that we're going to have in our app. And we've got this function called retrieve products, which is asynchronous. So its only purpose is to basically just fetch products. That is it. Now, to fetch products with StoreKit2, it's really simple. All you got to do is just basically call the products for function on the products API and just pass in your IDs. That's it. So we use try await to basically fetch it asynchronously, and we use a try keyword to basically handle any kind of errors that might occur. Now, you can do this if you want to, but what I like to do is, because I'm not going to lie, you might not think it, but I'm actually quite a clumsy and lazy person. Like, I'm the person that's always stubbing their toe on the end of the table. You can actually sort your products here, because if you create your products in like your StoreKit configuration file and you fetch them, or if you create them in App Store Connect, if you've not created them in order, it actually can come back in the order that you created in. So just to be sure, I add in this extra safety to just basically make sure they're all sorted by their price. And then after we finish doing that, we can now start to actually use this function to help us fetch our products. So in the root of our application, well, in our store, what we can now do is actually basically call this in the initializer, that function, and then we can then assign that to this published property that basically holds all of these like items and whatnot. Now, in order to use this manager, pretty simple. All we just need to do now is at the root of our app, we just need to create an instance of it, and then we need to just inject it into the environment so any of the other views can access it. Now, you might be wondering, why did I do that? And the reason why is because when you actually load up your app for the first time, you don't want to wait until someone's gone into the screen to then go and fetch the products. You want to actually fetch the products up front so it's just available whenever. So if this took a long time, it might be a good idea to maybe put a loading screen or something there to basically just handle that difference in time, but this is what you want to be doing. So now we've got in the environment, all of our all of our child views, all of our child views can basically now access this store. So in these child views, we can, I was thinking that I don't have no kids. So what we can now do is we can now access the store, and we can basically like just loop through those items that we fetched and pass it into our custom view called product view. Now, this product view is just a simple SwiftUI view, nothing crazy. It's just a VStack with a couple of text, and we just access different properties in the products API that we can now use. So there's some really nice ones now. So for example, display name will get me the localized display name that you set in App Store Connect or your StoreKit configuration file. You've also got description, which is basically the description as well. And then here, you've actually got display price. Now, with display price, I'd highly recommend you use this, because if you use price and try to format it yourself, you're just giving yourself extra work. What this property does is actually basically gives you the formatted price depending on the user's locale on their device. So all you need to just use is just use this string and you're good to go. But if you're someone who wants to actually use the actual monetary value, you can access that still by just basically going onto the price property here. So you can now do this and do any kind of calculations, discounts, whatever it is that you want to do. It's up to you. Now, I'll be honest with you, right? I saw this talk at the new Dub, and I thought, my God, Tim is going to Sherlock this talk. And he almost did, but he didn't. But what they have done is they've now got this new view called a product view, which is available from Xcode 15, iOS 17. So if you don't want to build your own custom view, you can basically use this product view, and it'll just lay it out like this. There's different styles you can use. There's also something called a subscription view as well. I'd highly recommend you check out this talk about what's new in StoreKit. A lot of the logic that I just showed you before is still completely valid. It's just that this just basically helps you speed up development. Cool. So we've got our products, but how do we actually make a purchase? Like, it's all good and well, I'm looking pretty on the screen, but I want to make some money. So all we need to do is just basically create a new function called purchase, and in this function, we're just going to pass in our product. Now, in order to make a purchase, it's pretty straightforward. All you do is just call this function called purchase. Now, you might be thinking, all right, cool, the talk's done now. It's not done. we're getting there. But the problem with doing this is that we've actually got this property called result. So what do we need to, what is this? How do we use it? What's its purpose? Well, in life, things aren't always straightforward. And when people are buying stuff, things can happen. So in result, you actually have different types of cases of what could happen. So a user could cancel, success, failure, or be in a pending state, whatever it may be. So depending on these switch statements here, you actually want to handle those scenarios. Now, in this part of the talk, I'm just going to talk about the success, the happy flow. And you'll see that on success, we've got this thing here called verification. Like, what is verification? Well, starting from last year's StoreKit2, updates that we basically got, all the transactions that Apple basically makes when you're using this API are automatically signed and validated for us. So before in StoreKit, you actually had to do some kind of like validation on a server. You don't really need to do that too much now when you're working with this new API. So StoreKit2 handles any kind of validation for you. And what that means is that when you finish doing that validation, you can now just serve your users the content. Now, that content could be a badge, it could be like new features in your app, whatever it may be, it's up to you. But in our case, I'm just going to basically say to people, thank you, and just show this card here. So we're just going to say thanks to the user, and then at this point when we show thanks, we know that the transaction's verified and the person who's making the purchase is who they say they are, in a nutshell. So how do we handle this in code? Well, all we need to do is just simply call, basically use the verification result from before and basically check to see if something went wrong, throw an error, or else we'll just return what we get back from the verified, the safe, so we can just use that. So if we go back to our switch statement before where we had the verification, where we have our success, all we need to do now is just basically verify it. So check to see if that transaction is verified, if it's all good. And if it's all good, then we'll continue. If it's not all good, because we use the try keyword here, we'll throw an error, and then we'll handle any kind of errors from there. Now, because we're using Swift UI here, I've got my views bound to some kind of property. So when I set that action to successful, the screen will update, and it will show some kind of card to the user. And then the one thing you always want to make sure you do is actually finish your transaction at the end. So basically let StoreKit know that, OK, this purchase here is done. So when you do all of that, this is the journey that you get. So you basically get this with the sheet. You can hit pay, done. You get a pop-up because you're in a sandbox environment. And we now get our card to tell us that everything's all good. But if you actually was to run this in Xcode, there's a bit of a problem. Because if you run this in the SwiftUI previews, there's no warnings. It's all good. But it's a problem, right? And you'll basically see this warning in Xcode. And you might be thinking, OK, what's going on here? What's this talking about? So far, I've only been talking to you about the happy paths. So when things are all great in life, I didn't know there's going to be kids at this talk, man. So, but stuff happens, and that stuff that happens basically can happen in life. So that could be like someone not putting their card details, someone not putting, basically agreeing to the latest terms and conditions. There's a whole bunch of stuff that could go left, that could go wrong, right? And that's essentially what this warning is telling us. It's basically telling us that you're not handling interrupted purchases when things go wrong. So how do we handle interrupted purchases? Well, in order to actually handle interrupted purchases, in the transaction API, there's this property here called updates. And what this is it's basically a property that gives us back an async. It's basically just an async stream that pushes through updates that are pending. So we can listen to this to know when we have pending transactions that we need to handle. So I'm not just going to dump this on a code review and just say, read this, and good to go. We'll actually break this down because it's a lot of code. And what we need to do here is actually configure our app to listen to those pending updates. So the first thing we want to do when we're looking at this function, when we're breaking it down, is actually define the signature. So because this is going to be run within some kind of task, we're going to return a task. It's not going to return anything, it's going to be void, and it's just going to have an error for the failure. So if something goes wrong, we'll handle that. We'll then declare the task within this function, and then I'm just going to use a do catch to handle any kind of errors for this specific task scope here, if I want to throw a specific error or whatnot. Now, that was an async stream, so what I'm able to do now is actually use the for await to basically loop through updates and listen to those updates that get pushed through. So if any of those interactions are pending, they'll get fired within this loop here. And then what I can now do is actually check to see if those transactions are verified, so we can reuse the exact same function from before. Now, if those transactions are verified, all I literally need to do here is I just need to basically set successful. So if I set this to successful, we'll now see the card that tells the person that, hey, thanks for the tip. And then finally, again, we just want to finish the transaction, so say, hey, finish. So we wrote that function, but you're thinking, all right, where does it go? Like, where do I actually put this? You just showed me a bunch of code, but I don't know how to use it. So what we want to do is similar to like when we fetch our products, we actually want to set this listener up when we initialize our store at the root of our application. So I'm going to create a property here to basically capture that listener. And then I'm going to create another line here in my initializer to basically return the task that we set up in the configure and basically store it in that property. And then a good practice to get into, just in case you ever was to move this somewhere else in your app, is to use the dinit to basically cancel any kind of pending listens if you don't need this object anymore. So now we've got this set up. But how can we test it out? Well, in order to test it out, we actually have this new button. And this was here in Xcode 14. And if you ever wondered what this button does, you're about to find out now. Because what this button does is it basically allows you to test transactions. That's literally what it does. So the screenshots I'm about to show you, these are actually from Xcode 14, but it's kind of similar with Xcode 15. There's not too much of a difference. But you basically get this view where you can see all your transactions, manage them, and all your information. So you can see here, these are just a list of test transactions that I've done whilst I was just basically building this talk and testing it out. And in the top right-hand corner, you have these buttons here, where you can basically configure, setting up deleting a transaction, approving it, rejecting it. So you can literally handle all the cases that you want within this manager here, so it's really nice. Now, in Xcode 15, it's a tiny bit different. It's not too different, but you basically can just, you don't need to open up that file directly in Xcode. You can just open it up externally and then test out on your simulator, and then create products up front. So I could have dummy products set up within my app before even running it if I wanted to, which is pretty cool. And then if I wanted to actually just test out interrupted purchases, I just got this option here. So if I select my StoreKit configuration file, I can go to the editor. When I go to the editor, I can basically enable interrupted purchases, and then now I'm in the mode to actually test out things going left. So when I actually turn this on as well, there's also an alternative way of doing this in Xcode 15, and that is with this setting here. So if you choose the StoreKit configuration file in Xcode 15, you'll actually get this option with all the options for locale, interruptions, and everything that you want, right? So you can also do that from there, or you can do it in here in Xcode 15, which is really nice. So what does this actually look like when we're testing it out? So in this scenario, I'm going to show you what it's like if the app's in the foreground and something goes wrong, and I'll simulate it. So I'm going to basically choose the StoreKit configuration file, enable interrupted purchases, and then you'll see now when I actually tap on the option, you'll see I didn't even need to rerun the app there. It just lets me do it. I can now make a purchase. This purchase will now fail. So if you go into a box, you'll see it's failed. I can now tap on that purchase, and I can resolve it. So you can see in the logs it says something's gone wrong. I can resolve it. When I resolve it, boom, the card comes up. So I can handle those scenarios where things would go wrong. But I've only showed you the scenario when the app is in the foreground. What about if people close your app and it's it's in a killed state? Well, we can actually handle that as well the exact same way. So in this video, this time I'm going to make a purchase, but I'm actually going to completely just kill the app. Okay, cool. You're probably wondering why it's got Pokemon there. I don't know either. So we're going to run it, and now we put it into the foreground, and we're now going to resolve it. And you can see that it's now, resolved and carried on. Exactly the same. So now we're handling it in both scenarios, when it's in the background and when it's in a dead state. So you can handle situations when things don't go to plan. But the most important thing about the setting is don't forget to turn it off, because I was in a situation when I was recording a video, and I was like, man, I can't release this video, man, because this just isn't working, and I just realized I didn't turn off this setting. So basically, you just need to make sure that you always turn off this setting, because if you don't, you're wondering why my transactions not going through. It might be because of one of these options, so keep that in mind. Cool. So how do you actually create these products in App Store Connect? Well, similarly, in the StoreKit configuration file, All you need to do is go into your App Store Connect. When you go into your App Store Connect, there's an option on the left that says in-app purchases. If you click on that, you can basically create your product, give it a name, type, all that stuff, and you should be good to go. Now, we've done all of that. Submit the app. We're living our best life. We're going to Zante, Magaluf, Benidorm. We're doing the whole 3 peaks, right? But after you finish doing all of that, you now get this email from App Store. Like, honestly, who's been in a battle with the review team in this room, man? Because if you've won that battle, like, honestly, that is character building. But after you basically get that email, you're now looking at your screen like this. And then you've now finished sending your email, and you basically get back another response from them saying that, you know what, we still don't agree with what you're saying, and you still don't meet our guidelines. So now you're looking at the screen like this. And to be honest with you, all these problems can be seriously avoided really quickly, right, if you just spend some time on a bit of a checklist. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to give you a bit of a checklist for things to check before you just go and submit your app, right? So the first thing, and this is not a really obvious one, make sure you fill out the agreements for terms and banking, because if you don't do this, it's actually super possible that basically your app won't work when you actually put it into test flight and whatnot. Another thing is actually enabling the capability. So in Xcode, you actually do need to add a capability for in-app purchases. So if you don't do this and you put it onto test flight, it won't work. It's really weird, this, because if you run it locally on your machine, it actually does work, but it just doesn't work in test flight. Don't know why. Make sure that as well, when you submit your in-app purchases, they're actually marked as ready to submit. So if you didn't know this, when you actually want to submit your in-app purchases, there's actually 2 separate submissions. So you have to submit your in-app purchases, and then you then have to also submit your app. So what I would do if I was you is I would actually submit your app, but there's an option in App Store Connect to basically do as a release, pending release, when you actually hit the button to release it. So don't do an automatic release, honestly. Just have it pending, and then when these are approved, submit the whole thing. I can see some people taking pictures. I've still got 3 more to go, so you might want to wait until that. So make sure that your product identifiers are unique as well. And it was so hard for me not to use the Beyonce unique sound effect at this part of this talk, right? I was so tempted to use it, but I couldn't clip it in properly. But make sure they're unique, right? And the reason why is because you can't actually have multiple products with the same ID within your product. And crazily enough, you actually can't have them as well between different projects. So if you have one bundle identifier that you create for that one project, you can't reuse it in another one. I had to learn that the hard way, so just make sure they're all unique using your actual project's bundle identifier. You want to also as well make sure that you test your app in test flight. So when it goes to a test flight, that essentially is literally like going to a staging or a pre-prod environment. So if you see your in-app purchases not working in test flight, more than likely the reviewer will see the exact same thing and reject your app. So this is a super important step. And the final thing is, you would think this, right, but don't assume. Make it super clear. Yeah, you can take pictures now. Make it super clear and easy for you to basically, for the reviewer to basically know what it is that they're going to see and where to find it. So you'd be amazed, but I don't know how technical these reviewers are, but some of them, I think that they don't know how to use an iPhone, because some of them just start going to random places. But when you're doing your submission, upload a video, put a voice on it to do a talk through or something, but literally spell it out in like ABC, where to find it, how it works, everything, because it'll save you a whole bunch of time. Cool. Now, if you do all of that, your life's gonna be good like this. So you could be in the pub with a pint, life's gonna be good. So I pretty much reached the end of my talk here, but just to let you all know as well, I actually do have stickers. So I have a couple of stickers. So if you see me reaching in my back, I'm not scratching my ass, I'm trying to get stickers out for people. So that's what I'm trying to do, because right now, my ass is like packed to the brim with stickers. Like, you can't see it, but honestly, I can feel them like touching my left butt cheek right now, yeah? Seriously. Also as well, if you didn't know, I actually do have courses, like I said before, but I also have a new course as well on Swift Data. This is a free course I actually have on my YouTube channel that goes over basically building a to-do app using Swift Data. If anyone wants to ask me, do I think Swift Data is production ready? Yeah, I do. You can use it. Honestly, it's fine. Your laptop won't blow up. But there's a list of stuff, and there's a QR code for you to check it out if you're interested as well. My YouTube channel as well, if you want to subscribe to that, you'll see these are some of the videos that I've done on Swift Data recently, if you're interested in it. And something that I did in, I want to say this was in Chicago. I don't know if anyone here went to Deep Dish Swift in Chicago. Pretty lit, I'm not gonna lie. It's a really good conference. But I basically had to do like this whole like which is a lie. So I thought I'd bring it over here and see which one of these do you think is a lie. So the first one is I used to play for a football academy and not American football, UK football, the real football. And then I enjoy eating dry cereal. And the third one is I was once captured on TV in the background eating a McDonald's apple pie. Right, so I'm going to go from the top right. So if you think A is a lie, put your hand up. I think it's like 2 people. Okay, cool. Oh, shit. I think I just revealed the answer. My finger slipped. Actually, I didn't reveal the answer because I don't know if that was the wrong answer. Right, we'll try and recover that. Okay. If you think I enjoy eating dry cereal, put your hand up. Wait, by the way, do you all think that's a lie? Or you think that's true? You think it's a lie? All right, cool. If I was once captured on TV in the background eating a McDonald's apple pie, put your hand up if you think that's a lie. Right, okay, cool. So the 2 people at the back that I saw put their hands up are actually right. I didn't play for a football academy, that's a lie. So honestly, I'm awful at sports, right? Like, if your life depended on me scoring a penalty in like football, we are both going to heaven. I'm telling you right now. I'm going to see you at those gates. But yeah, I do enjoy eating dry cereal. My favorite dry cereal to actually eat is actually Lucky Charms. It's amazing. And Cinnamon Toast Crunch. But just to prove the McDonald's thing, because it actually is legit, right? There's me on BBC iPlayer eating a McDonald's apple pie, right? So whenever people like see me on Twitter saying that, like, this guy really likes McDonald's, yeah, I do, because this was in like 2015. So yeah, man. I don't know if it's still on BBC iPlayer, but I think there's some people who work for the BBC here. Maybe you can find it in the archives, but yeah, that's it. So that's the end of my talk. I want to thank everyone, for listening to me. I was going to say I'm really grateful to be here at SwiftLeeds again. I love the city of Leeds, man. That's my first time actually visiting. I live like an hour away because I live in Manchester. But I hope you all have a great conference. I can't wait to talk to you all. These are my socials. I'm not doing that X thing, man. To me, it's Twitter, man. I don't care what Elon says. But my YouTube and my website that has courses, more information about me and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening.